Hello and welcome, everybody. Uh, my name is J.R. Carroll, but I have an extra special guest for this live. The first, second time guest ever. Couldn't wait to get him back on. You know him from Sandman Slim. You probably know him if you've watched my channel from the Grand Dark, because I can't stop talking about that book either. But it is the best-selling author, Richard Kadrey. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Oh man. So yeah, I think you were on about a year and a half ago. I think I had you on. Yeah, and
Something like that.
a lot of people have asked me about that interview, and they ate it up. So I was like, yeah, I mean, you're one of my favorite authors. I try to read as much as I can. I think when we first got together, I was about halfway done with Sandman Slim. I have since finished it. So that's definitely another thing I wanted to talk about. But if you want to give maybe a more concise introduction of yourself and let everybody who might not know you, who exactly you are.
Sure. I'm Richard Kadrey. I am a New York Times best-selling author, best known for the Sandman Slim series. But I have a new series going with, short series going with Cassandra Caw called Carrion City. And the first one of those books is called The Dead Take the A Train. I almost said my band's name instead. There we go. The Dead Take the A Train.
One of the best, maybe the best cover of last year, guys. I mean,
it's a great cover. We were really lucky. And I think that we just saw the paperback cover, and I think it might even be better. Ooh. I mean, it's basically the same design. There's just more shimmer to it. If you like shiny things, I think the paperback cover a lot.
Yeah, excellent. So, one thing I've been kind of dying to ask you. Now, don't want to spoil anything, but with Sandman Slim, I was only halfway through, and I got to the end, and you ended it not in any way that I would have thought.
Good.
Yeah, halfway through the series, and I'm not going to tell people the way it went, because some people may have the opposite feelings as I did. But there's always this feeling when you have a major character, like you have a great, huge cast of characters throughout the series, but Sandman Slim is the main character, and when you have such a long series, that's celebrated, a lot of people feel like, well, is the character, how do you end the character, or how do you let the character exit the series? What was your thought process going into that? Because a lot of people are like, well, you gotta give them the big, finale, or you gotta kill them off, or and me and you talked about the killing your darlings thing. And if you want to go more into that too. But what was your thought process? I mean, going into the series, about how you felt about ending it.
Yeah, well, I always saw Stark. He had to go out loud because that's who James Stark is. But I wanted him to go out loud on his own terms, and I wanted Stark somewhere that both made sense to him and to readers and to me. When you get there, you'll see, he got his Warren Zevon ending, not mesothelioma ending, but he got his Warren Zevon song in the end, and that's kind of what I wanted to give him. And I don't know how much more I can talk about it without blowing it.
Yeah, but it had to be big and grand, because you started the series off on a super high note, and I've seen a few other a few other authors have kind of done that, and it always makes me wonder. It's like, where do we go from here? Because it was such a
Mm.
big, the stakes were so high immediately for the series. Now, did you do that on purpose? Were you trying to did you? Because I've heard other authors say, well, I wanted to really entice the publishers to be like, oh, big grand finale, grand opening, and then maybe we can turn it into a series. Was that your thought, or did you always this is how it was going to be regardless?
Oh, the opening was the opening. That first book was what it was going to be, no matter what. I got lucky in that when I pitched the book. I'm sorry, my head keeps my neck's hurting, so my head's a little.
Oh, you're
So it
you're
keeps
good.
kind of turning a bit. When I pitched the book, the opening was the opening. It was never going to change, no matter what.
Okay.
And that first section had to be what it was. And I was lucky in that we sold the first 3 books immediately. So I had some room to play around. So I could start really high, but
Okay.
then I had room with knowing I had at least 3 books that I could have peaks and valleys. I could start it really loud, let it go soft, and then come back up again. And I wanted those first 3 books because I didn't know if we're going to do any more. So I wanted each book to be unique. So the first book, Sandman Slim, is a very straightforward revenge story. Stark against the people who sent him to hell. The second book is a zombie novel. I wanted to try that. And then
Great.
the third book is kind of my fantasy quest novel. It's as close as I'm ever going to get to, some kind of a traditional fantasy quest, but it all takes place in hell, and it's as usual, Stark is screwing everything up.
Yeah, and I will that you mentioned the zombie thing. I love the way that you did zombies, and
Oh, thank you.
it was not. It's not. You do really well in okay, there are things that everybody knows that zombies are, but then your tweaks are so cool. Like I really think that that's why your whole series is as popular as it is, and because you use the things that people like, but then the twists and the tweaks that you do to each of them really sets them apart from other series that I have read, especially urban fantasy series.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I worked a lot on the zombie mythology in that book, and I love my little zombie, Johnny Thunders. He was very dear to my heart.
Yeah, and you also do a good twist on ghosts and the way ghosts work and the power that they have. I've always I talk with a lot of people about because ghosts are hard to pull off in fantasy books. I've
Yeah.
noticed sometimes ghosts just really fall flat, or they feel or sometimes ghosts feel OP, even though maybe the author doesn't want them to be. It's they're just sometimes they can just do too much or too easily do stuff. The way
Mhm.
you do ghosts was perfect, especially for your setting. It just worked so well. Was that something you really focused on to make sure that they didn't get OP'd as ghost characters?
Yeah, definitely. I tried to take all those tropes and twist them a little bit. I knew the tropes had to be there, but I tried to tweak them a bit. So I didn't have vampires in the series for a long time. I wanted the Jades were my vampires.
Yeah, and that the jade, that's another thing. I don't know if were jades a big thing back when you started the series. Was that something that was floating around there? Because
No,
now, I
I
mean,
made the Jades are mine. I made the Jades
yeah,
up.
yeah, I don't really see those in hardly any series. I mean, maybe one here or there, but that could even be like you said, that could be attributed to you. Really, is people, because I think I have noticed that as I've read more and more. Because since the last time we've read, I think I've probably put in a good 70 plus 80 books, and I'm definitely starting to pick out stuff that you have influenced other people on.
Oh,
Um,
that's funny.
yeah, because I'm all caught up. Like I call you guys the Holy Trinity. You, Jim Butcher, and Kevin Hearn is like the Trinity of urban fantasy. And I've seen how, especially you and Jim have really influenced a lot of people as I've
Mm.
read on. Have you had people like other authors like come up to you and ask you to kind of use your things or tell you how influential you've been on them?
No, but I mean, work is out there in the world. I mean, I was influenced by people. Obviously, all writers are. So I just figure once the work's out there, if someone sees something in it that inspires them, it's fine by me.
Who who like where did you get the your idea for Sandman Slim? Like what authors did you kind of pull from to kind of create your own world?
Well, I've said on Facebook recently, one big influence was Roger Zelazny, his books, and not the Amber books. Everyone, when you say Roger Zelazny, people immediately think of the Amber books, and those I consider interesting work, but they didn't have that much effect on me. They were much something I discovered later. His earlier fantasy work, Jack of Shadows, Doorways in the Sand, even a science fiction like Hell Tanner. That was the character. What the hell was that?
That sounds familiar.
Damnation Alley. Damnation Alley. They had
Yeah.
a feel. It was less idea based and more the feeling of Zelazny's work. He had a kind of rigor to it, but also a wildness to it and a really great imagination. So that was a big a touchstone for me.
Yeah, well, and yeah, I definitely can feel that in all of your books. There is that kind of like that grittiness and the feel, like you said, there's a feeling to these characters.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get authors who are really great writers, but they're so technical,
Hmm.
and they sometimes I feel like some authors overthink and they want it to be way polished,
Yeah.
whereas like is that something that you try to avoid? Do you try to not like you want to keep your stuff a little gritty? Is that
Yeah. I mean, I'm an old punk. I take kind of a punk attitude toward these things. I mean, I really want the work to be good. I want the prose
yeah.
to be there. But at the same time, well, another writer that influenced Sandman Slim is Richard Stark, the Parker books. And those are pure pulp action crime stories. And that was a really big influence on me. The I'd never read anything as hard and dangerous as Richard Stark when I first came across it. The first Parker book is The Hunter, and I'd never read anything like it before, and I wanted to see could I apply what Richard Stark was doing, to fantasy or science fiction, and in honor of him, that's why I named my character Stark. He was a
Oh,
big influence.
that's cool, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
like
in
that.
fact, there's a villain named Parker in the
Yeah.
first Sandman Slim too. So I wanted to put that out there as like, hi Richard Stark, you really helped me out. I mean, I read that book when I was 20, so I'd been thinking about it for years. And Sandman Slim was where it finally came to me. This is the moment to take what I learned from those books and put them in a whole new context, an urban fantasy context rather than just a real world crime context.
Yeah, and that you mentioned Parker, it's like I think why I love your writing so much, and any author that I really like read most of their works is authors who know how to create villains. I mean,
Mm,
I've read some good books, you know, that the heroes and the plot and the ideas are amazing, but the villains just lack so many
mm,
times. I mean, even like I think that's why I like DC better than I like Marvel because
mm,
I think DC does villains better.
mm. Okay.
Um, a lot of times, but is that something that you really think about a lot? You like, do you sit down and you're like, I really need to make sure that these villains stick out?
Oh, absolutely. The villains have to be as fully formed and have as specific and logical motivations as the heroes. I'm not the first person to say it. No villain sees themselves as a villain. They
Yeah, I
just have
love
an agenda, and sometimes their agenda runs over people.
that.
I,
That's a good way to put it.
I mean, I was just writing about Dune earlier today, and Paul Atreides doesn't think he's a villain.
Yeah.
But if you keep reading, you go, "Oh, Paul, you fucked up really badly. Oh, Paul, what did you just
So,
do?"
so what are some villains outside of your own creations? What are some villains that you really like and you really think are well done?
Wow. Um, when people ask me stuff like that, my brain immediately goes blank.
Yeah, I do that too. Like, because you think you have it so much, and then you're like, oh man. But
Yeah.
well, one thing, other thing I wanted to talk about is, you had a great run there with Lucifer,
Oh, yeah.
and
That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun to get to write a different version of Lucifer.
yeah, yeah, and I had always thought to myself, you know, did they come to you for Lucifer because you wrote such an awesome Lucifer in your own series? Was that something in their head, or did they just like, oh, you're an urban fantasy guy, like? What kind of spurred them to pull you on to do that? Such a big, well-known character.
What pointed in my direction was Holly Black. I owe
Okay.
the whole thing to Holly Black. She had done when they revived Lucifer. She had done the previous run on it, and Holly's run was very much within the Lucifer mythology, going all the way back to the original Lucifer comics that
Yeah.
Gaiman and Carey had done. So then when I came on board, they said, all right, we've redone the original mythology. Now we want a slightly different Lucifer. And that's when they wanted the Lucifer that I did that was more about the club, about Lucifer in the city.
Okay. So I guess this would follow into the next question I was going to ask you is like, the we had Lucifer the show, right? That had a
Mhm.
nice long run, and then it switched over to Netflix, and then we have now Lucifer from Sandman. That a lot of people are living like. How do you feel about both those characters, and like what are your views on Lucifer and these other mediums?
Well, Lucifer's a great character. I mean, any Lucifer. That's I've taught writing a couple of times, and I've sometimes given Lucifer as a writing exercise to
Oh, okay.
students, saying if you can't write an interesting Lucifer, you've really got some problems because Lucifer. There are so many directions to take Lucifer in as a character. There's the way I did it in Sandman Slim. There's Gaiman's Lucifer. There's the way Carey did it. Um, and I guess the TV. I never saw the Lucifer TV show because what I read about it before it came on, I didn't like the sound of it. They changed Mazikeen and stuff like that, and I didn't like that.
Oh,
But
okay. Okay.
there's some there's something in Lucifer that sh- there's something there for everybody. I mean, my Lucifer came out of. I mean, my Lucifer, and I think Gaiman said the same thing. We're both stealing from Milton. So that's where I got started.
Yeah,
and wanting to take that Lucifer and put him in a new context, and then to twist him again, which I don't want to give too much away, but have Lucifer evolve in ways that I hope were surprising.
yeah. My best friend, that's like one of his favorite comic book series of all time, and he just loves he loves your run on the comics, and he's
Oh,
just
thank
like,
you.
yeah, he's just like top notch. Like you said, like Lucifer is just an interesting character, and
Hmm.
the way that you put your spin on him, and I love the kind of the Lucifer that you have in Sandman Slim, where he comes down and he kind of hangs out and he goes to fancy clubs, but then it's also there's always this level where you can talk to him like a normal person, but there is that level where like you can't go past this level or he'll bury you.
Yeah.
That is such an interesting thing, and how we were talking about how high you started on Sandman Slim. um, I love the big battle shoot 'em ups, but even more maybe I like whenever you do the low level street
Hmm.
level, more personal stories, for Stark. um, what would do I mean, are they equally fun to you, or do you enjoy one better than the other yourself?
No, I love both of them. I mean, like I said, you need peaks and valleys, and I love because people expect so much noise with Stark.
Yeah.
I really enjoy going very quiet, and I enjoy those long conversations, those quiet moments, whether it's with Candy or Samael or even Kasabian.
Oh,
I like Stark and Kasabian a lot.
yes.
They were really good. I mean, they're literally the odd couple. That's the way I thought of them. Felix and Oscar, just with a lot more blood.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Yeah, Kasabian, like you have such great dynamics with your main character. Is how do you keep it so fresh for every single character? Because sometimes a lot of people will just use side characters as like devices to just be
Mm.
like, okay, I'm using him because when he comes in, he can help the character push through certain things, where it's like when it always feels like when you pull your side characters in, it's like you feel backstories already, like they're already talking about things, they do feel like friends. It doesn't feel like an npc character coming in and talking with him.
Well, you have to give everybody their own agency. I mean, like I said with villains, everybody has an agenda, and
Yeah.
you have to see them that way. Even if it's a minor character, that minor character wants something. They're not just there to point the way down the road for your down the quest
Facilitate.
for your
Yeah.
protagonist. I mean, even someone like Wild Bill Hickok, I really wanted to give Wild Bill, um, a point of view, a reason for being there beyond just, hey, look, here's this interesting guy. Let's throw him in the mix. There's a reason that he's there. There's a reason he's involved with the story. And same thing for Kasabian. I mean, Kasabian evolved a lot over the course of the series, and I was really, again, happy where I left off with him. And even someone, a small character who didn't, she ended up later in the book, Fuck Hollywood. I love Fuck Hollywood. And, I think Stark at one point says, you're my little sister. And that's the way I felt about her. So I wanted to take care of her. And she had her problems. She had things she wanted in the world. And she got to evolve too. And I like how all of them managed to have their own stories. And that was important to me.
Yeah, and as you've talked about like the peaks and the valleys, I think you have been able to do that as well as any author that I've seen. And I was reading, on your Facebook page there, where you were talking about you've been writing for a few different movies,
Mm,
possibly. And I kept thinking over the last since I finished Sandman, I've been just thinking to myself, man, like Marvel or DC, like people that they need someone like you who knows how to bring things back down, because especially Marvel. I mean, we've all seen it. Like they don't know how to come back down. They're just like, we just got to keep pushing the envelope, pushing the envelope. I'm like, come back down to street level. Like it's okay. We'll enjoy it if you write it well. Um, and so my question is like, so how is your writing projects? Like, how does Hollywood work for you? I know you wrote a cryptic message the other day where you're kind of like, Hollywood's kind of
I got
wonky
screwed.
sometimes.
I got
Yeah,
screwed.
you got screwed. Well, yeah, what is
It's like
yeah,
you play in Hollywood. You play in Hollywood long enough, someone's going to knife you in the back, and that's what happened to me. And that's part of it. I mean, I still want to do Hollywood projects, but anybody who wants to get into Hollywood stuff is listening to this. Find some people you trust, keep them close, but always know that in Hollywood, things can change, and people you thought were straight up aren't.
Ooh.
But that said, there are still some great people I'm working with. And I'm really looking forward to going, working with them some more. I think there's some interesting possibilities. But you got to watch yourself. You need a good agent. You need a lawyer. I mean, I have a lawyer through my agent. But you also have to accept that sometimes things just are not going to go your way. And it doesn't have to be getting screwed like what happened to me. It can just be something changes at the studio.
Yeah.
This person who liked your work isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
Budgets get changed, things like that. People disappear. People disappear. There was one producer we were talking to who just went away.
It's just,
Went
yeah.
away. Wait, we're talking. You were here a minute ago. Just went away.
Yeah, I was when I interviewed Jim Butcher. He said the same thing as you. He was just like, he's like, yeah, sometimes like things look like they're marching forward, and then all of a sudden, someone just disappears. You're just like, okay, so I guess we'll just wait around for another 6 months till something happens.
Exactly. And by the time that 6 months rolls around, everyone's kind of looking at you like, who are you? How did you get in here? I don't remember you. And that's one project right now. It's really kind of funny that everything was so exciting at first, and now it's just like
yeah,
forgotten about. So the secret to Hollywood is take their money and expect nothing.
exactly. I like that. Yeah, I've heard a lot of authors who are doing adaptations now. I don't know if you're, I actually think Hollywood right now needs a Sandman Slim series, or I think we need to get back to. I mean, Stark gets very deep, and there's some really emotional, especially I would say about 3/4 of the way in, there is some really emotional stuff. But we need a fun series like a Sandman Slam. I don't know if you can divulge if you have any, anything going on in the background with Sandman or not, but
well, I mean, there is a movie in development that's been in development for years now. And right now there's a new group that's working on it that I have faith in. So I think something interesting could come out of that. I can't really say much more, but it came close Hollywood. It came close a couple of times before, didn't work out. This new group I have some faith in. So what is it, June now when we're recording this, end of June?
Yeah.
By the end of the year, we'll have a much better sense of whether this thing is real or not.
Oh man, see, breaking news right now, because like I think that if you because that's what kind of where I was going with some authors. They've told me it's like they're like, yeah, Hollywood is like sit on your hands, and then we need to go now, we need to go now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hurry up and wait. And then everything explodes and they need everything yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think like if anybody out there, the producers happen to be watching this, like I think the people are ripe for that kind of story. I think people want a fun shoot 'em up, action packed, series that can evolve into very emotional characters. Because I just think we've kind of got drowned a little bit in people trying to push too much. I don't know. I don't know how I want to say it, but just there just hasn't been that fun movie. We need more fun movies, more fun TV shows. Um, but yeah, Jenny has a question here. Both of you know who inspires which part of your stories, or do you absorb them through osmosis and see what happens? So yeah, how do you create your characters? I guess, and are you picking from other type of characters, or do you just it just comes to you?
No, I'm not really picking from other people's characters or anything. I mean, I have notebooks that are just full of notes for characters, and they can be anything from a sentence to a paragraph to a page. I was always trying to put together, like in Sandman Slim specifically, a really eclectic group of characters, really in all my books. Same thing with The Grand Dark. I had a core group of people that had to be there, but then I wanted everyone around them to be interesting too. And it can, you pull from your friends, you pull from people you see somebody over there and you wonder, what are they like? They're doing this weird thing. Why are they doing that? Clearly this thing that seems weird to me makes perfect sense to them. Why is that? What's their motivation? And it's things you overhear. I fly, I take trains. I like trains a lot.
Yeah, you are moving.
Yeah. And
I see you
people,
all over the place.
yeah, people just talk and you hear little bits and pieces of their crazy life. And it's all fodder for characters in your story.
Yeah, I mean, and one, I actually want to kind of get back to the Dead Take the A Train. And you were Cassandra Caw, right? That's how
Yes.
you're saying it? Yeah. So I've never worked directly with anybody in forming of course I had people who kind of help me, ideas, alpha readers, beta readers, and stuff like that. But how is it working directly with somebody who's going to be co-authoring? What's that flow like?
It's interesting. When we started the first book, I think we did what everyone thinks collaborating on a book is, which is you're going to alternate chapters.
Okay.
That was a disaster. We write at very different rates. I have a big shape of the story in my head before I start writing. I know there are people who just like to kind of fumble their way through the story and see where it goes. Stephen King has his whole.
I was gonna ask you about that. You put the post not too long ago.
I wonder how much King really it means that.
Does he play it up a little bit? Maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who comes up with one way of writing a story, whether it's just you can't outline, you're a hack if you outline. I don't know if you can hear my cat over there.
Your cat is awesome.
I always outline. But the thing about writing an outline is you have to remember, for writers out there who are getting started, you can write an outline, but you have to remember you don't owe that outline anything.
Exactly. That is great advice.
I use an outline as the overall shape of a story, but then something interesting, I'll start writing it, and then something interesting comes along, and I'll throw the outline out, and I'll make a new outline. And then something else interesting happens, and I'll throw that outline out. So by the end, with a book, I might have 5 or 6 outlines, and they're just there to help me give a shape to the book so I sort of know where I'm going down the road. You don't, I don't do that for short stories. Stories, I just wing it. And then I'll go back and fix them later. But with a novel, I like to have some sense of where the road is going, even if I change direction along the way.
Yeah, that is such great advice, and that's something I kind of learned myself because my book series I started writing it when I was like 18, and then I
Mm.
left it. I left it, and then life happens, of course, right? You got to work, you
Oh,
got to pay bills,
absolutely.
and then I came back like 17 years later, and yeah, and the character situation is my main character. He was a side villain that was kind of a throwaway character, but he was
Sure.
so interesting to me that I was like, I'm just going to write a series about this guy. But he's nothing like he only has a seed of what he was in that. And my best friend, he's like, yeah, they're nothing like each other. And I was like, yeah, I had to learn that I don't owe that old story anything.
Right.
You know, you
Very much.
know, yeah, and that's so great to hear you say that because I'm just like, yeah, I kind of struggled. I was like, well, do I need to stay to what it was back then? And I'm like, no, you're a better writer now. This is a
Hmm.
whole different thing. You don't owe it anything. I've never heard anyone else kind of say that, but that's really good.
It's
Um,
whatever you need for that moment, for that story, even if it's an old character. I mean, you change as an author. If that character is real, that character, if you imagine that character as a real person existing, they're going to change over time too. So, I don't see anything wrong with taking that character from 17 years ago, bringing him back and having them be vastly different. It makes perfect sense as a human being. I mean, when I
yeah,
look back at, I look back at myself at 20, 30, 40 years old. I mean, just those years, it's like you can become very different people along the way.
yeah, yeah. 10, yeah, 5, 10 years is a long time.
Mhm.
You learn, you grow. The world does
I'm
too.
going to do something here for a second.
Oh, no problem.
There we go.
uh,
Ace just wanted to come up. He thought he wasn't sure, but once he gets up, he has to say hi to everybody. Hello. Ace
yeah,
has a much bigger following than I do, so
yeah, I think your cat is a celebrity on Facebook too.
he is. He is. People love him.
Yeah, I got 3 cats, so I'm definitely a cat person. Yeah, sometimes people, yeah, some people when I'm making a video and they can hear a little bit of a tunk tunk in the back, and that's I got a 20-pound Maine Coon who doesn't like to be locked out of the room, so he'll kind of butt up against the door.
Yeah, I was actually going to lock Aces out, but then I gave him some catnip, and he's been asleep for about an hour, and he just woke up. So now he has to say hello to everybody. He always does this. I mean, I live alone, so it's pretty quiet here. But the moment I start talking on a Zoom or something like that, he
What
perks
are
up
we
immediately.
doing?
It's like, oh, you're talking to me? It's like, no, I'm not talking to you, cat.
Oh man. How eventually did you guys form that book and that teamwork? If because you said it was a disaster to go chapter to chapter. How did you
Yeah.
guys end up doing it?
What we realized is the best way to do it would be to write huge sections of it and then hand it off back and
Okay.
forth. So that first book, we each rewrote the book completely. And then we gave it to the editor and then rewrote it again. Then there was a second round of not quite as big revisions, but there was a second round that was still pretty big. So by the time that book was over, each of us had probably written about 300,000 words. So
Wow.
it's a huge process. And
Wow.
probably not, again, not the most efficient way to do these things. But
Yeah, I
it
was
worked
thinking
for us.
300,000. That's a 800 page book on itself. If you would have,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
how much you wrote.
And I think the second book's going to work in a similar way. Not quite, the first book was just fraught. We didn't know what we were doing. The second book's going to be a bit smoother, but it's going to still be writing huge amounts, exchanging huge amounts of the book, and then finally ending up with a draft, handing that off to the editors and letting them kind of make this thing, sort of go, okay, what is this thing? And then giving it back to us to put the final polish on.
So was working with Cassandra Call, was that a you thing? Was that a publisher thing? Like, hey, we think you guys would mesh, or did you know her as a friend and just say, hey, could we work together?
Actually, Cassandra is non-binary, so Cass's pronouns are they.
Oh, yeah.
I just throwing that out there. So
no, you're good.
Cass and I knew each other from Twitter.
Oh, okay.
So we've just been talking. We became friends there, talked about our books. We'd each read the other's work. So just kind of threw it out there at one point. We just talking and said, let's just try something together. And that's where Dead Take the A Train came from. I had the character of Julie Cruz in my head as, this very powerful magic operative who was down on her luck and needed some help and found it in the wrong place. And then Cass and I just started expanding it from there.
Yeah, that first chapter is wild. Like I love that. I love when and maybe it's more of a hallmark of urban fantasy where you kind of just pop right out of the gate, where some more epic fantasy is like super slow build and we're just learning about the world. You were like, yeah, we're gonna do some stuff to some demons and I was just like, was that your idea to really come out that strong and that graphic, some things happening?
Well, that was, again, like Stark, Julie isn't a subtle person. So once we knew that we were going to open with kind of an exorcism, inevitably Julie being who Julie is, it's going to be just a huge damn mess. And then it became a question of where, how. The bar that that opening takes place in is a real bar in New York.
Okay.
And so a lot of that first book, New York we're very careful with New York being New York, taking a few liberties in the second book, but New York is very real in this.
Yeah. Was that because I know you wrote a post on Facebook about cities and making them real, but sometimes you can go is that something that you try to do? Because I interviewed Kevin Hearn, who actually gave you a nice forward on the Grand Dark there, and he was talking about he tries to go to places if he can and kind of see the layout.
Absolutely. I lived in LA for years, so Sandman Slim was kind of a natural for that. But even that, I kind of fooled around with stuff sometimes. And then going back into the history of the place. I love toward the end of the series getting to talk about the old Pussycat Theater on Hollywood Boulevard and the Mask, the punk club downstairs, stuff like that. So I try to keep things real, but every now and then kind of got to screw things up a little bit. Because in the end, it's my book.
Yeah, exactly.
If I want to set the Statue of Liberty on fire, I'm going to set the Statue of Liberty on fire.
Well, and those are some that's what I also like. I like to, and most of my books have taken place, hundreds of years in the past. But so I always I try, because I think it's cool. If you're so and so walked into Boston in 1611, and you're but if somebody was well, Boston wasn't around until 1630 or whatever. What do you know? So I try to keep it real so people are like, oh, he did do his research and stuff. But I always like to have that undertone of like, well, this world is kind of like there's underground stuff. So behind a famous statue, there might be a club that nobody knew about, or something like that. Yeah. So I do like how you're like, that's my story. I'll throw some, wonkiness in there and set it on fire if I want to. Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely. And then you put in some of the stuff in there. I mean, I'm not a big believer in Easter eggs, but there's a couple of things in there that amused me, and they may amuse no one else, and no one else might get them. But there's a bookstore in the Dead Take the A Train. That's where CBGB used to be in the Bowery. And I took great delight in using magic to run out the current residents of that space and put in my magic bookstore. So that's
I love it.
Little stuff you can do with your book. And it's like I said, I don't put it in there to make people go, I get that. But if somebody figures it out and makes them laugh, that makes me happy.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. I love that aspect. And speaking of, writing so many words and going back and forth, I don't know if I want to say a controversy really. But there's been this thing going around about, is epic fantasy dead? And publishers putting word restrictions on authors, and like, oh, they don't want authors writing books over 130K. Has that been something that you've seen, or have you ran into it, or are you, seasoned enough where they're just like, well, Richard, we trust you? Like, have you seen anything like that?
Nothing like that's happened to me, and I don't think anything like that's happened to Cass. And certainly no one's talked to us about it with the Carrion City series. And no one's ever really talked to me about it in general. I mean, my books aren't huge books. I think The Grand Dark was my longest book, and that was like a little over 140,000 words. So I don't write epic fantasy. I actually thought about trying it with a friend at one point, just to go, this is nothing either of us would ever do. Maybe we could do it. Maybe we could do something really fucked up together. Then the sort of reality of like, do you really want to write epic fantasy? Find a lot of it out, and then it's like, for me, it comes down to worrying about, I don't want to write people on horseback. I don't want something magic for them to be on that's not a horse. And then you're going to be in a tavern and there's a serving wench, and I don't want to write about wenches, It's like, I mean, I guess I could write wench boys, with the lady wenches, but the whole thing just,
because you always end up in taverns. Like I do it too. You always end up in taverns.
And who's gonna serve you? I mean, I don't know. I think we just got caught up on those old tropes, and it just exhausted us to try and figure out ways to get around them. And so it never happened. And, I'm kind of glad now. It would have just been one of those weird, can we do this? And then if we did it, would anyone care? So I have other experiments I want to do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I've told you before, it's like, and even more so with the Grand Dark, I plug that book any chance I get, any top 10 books in that series I do, I always throw that out there. So that's one thing why I always think you probably, if you wanted to, you could pull off a more of an epic fantasy, because it's a gritty, the pacing. You said it's your longest book. And in that book, the praise that I give it, that I don't give very many books. Like I'm not even sure even my favorite book, my top 2 favorite books would fall into this, because most of the time when I read a book, and if it's great, I'm still prepared to finish it. I'm like, it's okay. We're 400, 500 pages in, but I'm ready to see the end. This is going to be great. Or for the Grand Dark, I'm like, why are we stopping? Let's keep it's 140,000 words book. So it's a decent sized book. And I'm like, I was ready for another 100,000 words on that thing. It was so interesting, and the world that you built there.
Well,
But
I was
yes,
ready to write 100,000 more words, but the book failed, so my publisher didn't want the sequel.
yeah. I mean, and and the big thing with you know, yeah, the Grand Dark. Well, I mean, if you want, Jenny asks, is the Grand Dark a standalone? I
I
mean,
really wanted to write a sequel. I actually planned a sequel, and then because I knew where some of those characters were going and where I wanted to take them, because really, no, I don't think any of their stories are finished, locked
no.
down at the end of the first book. So I really wanted to show where they were going, and I had some surprise. You know, I wanted to pay off the characters you knew, and I had some new characters, new places that people were going to be. Maybe someday I'll get to write it. I hope so. Maybe I'll have to do it as a Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, Jenny, you won't be disappointed if you read the book, which you should. You won't be disappointed with the end, but you'll just want more. That's exactly. I was not disappointed in how it ended. I just wanted more of it.
Yeah,
You know,
me too. Me too, man.
and there's been a lot of people, and like I said, I just interviewed Jim Butcher not too long ago, and I was asking him about, Sanderson had his huge thing, and now
Oh yeah.
everyone's like, well, that's going to change everything. That's going to change everything. And I'm like, and my thought process is that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, for some people,
Right.
it will. I think for authors who are more established,
Yeah.
maybe like yourself, it can. I wouldn't expect somebody like me who's still just getting started that I'm going to be like, oh, I'll just start a Kickstarter and I can fund the whole book and the whole project. And I don't think it's going to happen that way. But people who are established, and Jim said he's even going to start doing maybe a little project here or there, and then.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love, that would be such a cool thing to get out there. And like I said, anybody that I can get that book in to their hands.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that one of the projects that you like the most, like that you really would love to get back? Or is there another project that maybe we haven't heard of as much that you'd like to get pushed forward?
There are a couple. I mean, I would love to write that second, the Grand Dark book. That's a big one, which is called The Ash Palace. That was, I already had a title for it.
Oh, see, now you're like, I want.
No, I really want to write that one. And then I had, I don't know if people have read the Coop books, but I wanted to write a third Coop book, and I had that planned out too. But then again, the first two Coop books didn't sell well enough to make them interested in the third, which kind of broke my heart because the third one was going to be much weirder than the first two.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Like, if you put like a ton of energy into something, and then they're just like, we'll pass on this last one, and you're just like, I had one,
Yeah,
I had
one more in me, man.
Yeah, one more in me. So what are, if you can, I know you said Dead Take the A Train. Do you have a name for the second book yet?
I don't know what I can talk about. There's a lot of stuff up in the air, and I don't know what I can say about some of it. There is a title for the new book. I don't know if I can reveal it yet, though, which is, I always hate people saying that kind of thing, but I'm one of them.
Well, yeah, I'm sure your publisher probably wants to be the first one to be able to sneak that name, and I'm sure they're working on the cover, and it's gonna, so they can, get that everywhere.
So, I mean, there's a couple. I have like a couple of things that are big that I can't talk about. I mean, one thing I can just say is I just sold a new book that if you read my stuff, I think you'll be happy about. But like, that's all I can say about that. So
yeah, because you have been
there's so much. Oh, I mean, can I talk about that one? God, there's a bunch of stuff out there, man.
You're so busy, man.
I'll just, I don't know if they want me to say it, but I'm just going to say it. If people read and liked The Pale House Devil, that book. The second one is in, and it's called The Flesh King. And
Ooh.
Titan may be mad at me for saying that, but it's done. And I don't know the publishing date on that one, but I'm actually happy with that book. I think it really expands what I did in the first book really well. I'm happy with the characters. I really wanted to change things. I really wanted to shake up the three main characters, and Ford, Neuland, and Tilda, and put them back in New York. Let them wrestle with that place, with themselves and each other, and see where it took them. And I'm happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't. It is so crazy that you like Sandman Slim. Awesome covers. Love the covers of Sandman Slim.
Yeah, I got
And
lucky.
then Grand Dark, so cool with the mirror imaging, of the city and like the ink looking, ash looking stuff. And then of course do you have any input on these covers? Or are you just like, or do you just get lucky every time? Like,
No, Cass and I had input on the Dead Take the A Train, and I've had input on all of my covers. I've been really lucky. I've worked with really good publishers who respect their writers. So I've had input on the covers. I've had input on the narrators for the audiobooks, things like that.
Okay.
So I've been lucky. I've been working with really good people. So
Well, that's so cool to know that you've actually had input on there. So that it makes sense that most of your covers are just really good. I mean,
no.
Pell House. That I mean, I love the contrast. The back, the red background makes everything just pop off the cover on that.
Yeah, I like that cover a lot.
So okay, so now we know that that's coming in. And you said now that was a novella, right?
It was a novella. There's going to be 3.
So it's going to be a trilogy of novellas.
Yes.
How do you now? You say you kind of are more of a pantser when you do short stories, or is a novella still more of a a novel like structure for you?
I'm sorry, my cat got all this fur up my nose. Sitting here trying to clean my face off. The novella, Pale House Devil was something that was more like an extended short story for me. So I didn't have everything planned out in detail. I knew where I wanted to take it. I knew where it kind of had to go, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. So each section, it's why it's structured the way it is. So each section is its own little story.
Okay.
I wanted those bunch of little stories to add up to this much bigger story. So that was kind of my approach to it. And I'd only done that once more with a really some obscure stuff I wrote that no one's ever seen. So it was fun to go back to that structure for something larger and more mainstream. So I'm really happy with how that came out, and I'm happy with how the second one came out. They're fun characters to write, and of course, New York's a fun place to write about. I'm trying, after so many books set in LA, I'm trying to write about LA for a while, because the Sandman Slim books were in LA, the Coop books were in LA. So now I'm writing about New York a lot, and the Grand Dark, of course, took place in its own world.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I'm going to move to next with these stories, but New York and LA are fun to write about. Both those places are pretty deep.
Yeah, I would be interested to see how you do San Francisco, because you seem to be in San Francisco.
Yeah,
you're bouncing in and out of there a lot.
Well, I wrote one book in San Francisco, Butcher Bird, and that was one that I really enjoyed. And a lot of people, that sort of put me on the map. Before Sandman Slim, Butcher Bird kind of got my name out there a bit, and then Sandman Slim kind of took off from there. But that was my big San Francisco novel, and I might write something there again. San Francisco it's not what it used to be. So I'd have to, if I wrote a San Francisco book, I'd have to set it back a few years, because well, if you live there for as long as I did, the state of San Francisco is kind of sad right now. I mean, it feels like it's been kind
So
of
I've heard.
the center has been pulled out of it. A lot of the great places that used to be there, a lot of the great people aren't there anymore. They can't afford it, or places have been closed down. The tech bros have kind of run a lot of people out of town. I'm not wild about the mayor. I think the mayor has a lot to do with this. I think there's a whole.
Yeah,
I believe. I'm not saying this is true. I am a. I am not saying it is true, but I think there's probably like nasty corruption going on.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it.
Any kind of way you can sue me for, but I think there's a lot of funny stuff going on in San Francisco that I think is hurting the city.
Yeah, we got all kinds of people. People want you to go to Miami. They want you to go to San Diego and miss up Comic-Con.
I like Comic-Con. That's a very weird place to go to, but it's so exhausting. God, it's exhausting.
That is so cool, man. Well, I got you on here for an hour, so I don't want to keep you on too long. So what is some advice that you would give to somebody who wants to write novels or short stories, or even for Hollywood now? Like what kind of advice would you give to people?
Wow, that's always an interesting one. If you're getting started, even if you've been writing for a while, the hardest thing, but the most important thing, is to trust yourself. Everything that hurts you in writing is fear. It's panic that you're not good enough. It's panic that your idea isn't clever enough. Keep going. Learn to trust yourself. Even, when you're starting, you kind of have to force yourself to keep going. And whether that's through faith, whether that's through hope, or the way I came up was through sheer arrogance. You got to keep going. Here's a trick that helped me with my arrogant approach to my early career. Don't just read books you like. Buy books by authors you hate and keep them around on your desk. Every now and then, you're going to look at your work and go, oh my God, I suck. I can't do this. Then pick up that book you hate. And you're going to start reading it and you go, well, if this crap can get published, I can get published. And I'm honest. I'm not joking when I say that. Keep bad books around just for that moment.
Oh man, that is so well said. Because I kind of had that view myself too. After my first two books, I was like, man, like, imposter syndrome or whatever.
Oh, sure.
And but then you're like, am I good enough? Is this story good enough? Some people say it's really good, but is it? And then like you said, I'll read a book and I'm like, I didn't like that. They published that thing?
Yep.
I have a chance. Like
exactly. You do have a chance. You just have to get to the end. You have to have something that you can send out. You have to have the book, however way you think about it. You have to have the thing that you can show people. And once you get that, and then you write another thing, Dana Gould, the comedian, and I don't know where, he probably got this from someone else, but he said, things lead to things. Keep working on books, stories, scripts, whatever you want, whatever interests you, keep working, because things lead to things. I wouldn't have written the Lucifer comic if it hadn't been for Holly Black, and I wouldn't have known Holly Black if I hadn't written certain things. And Holly Black inspired me to write my YA novel, Dead Set. So I'm very grateful for her on two accounts. But most people don't know that I wrote a YA novel, because I don't look like I'd write YA novels about a 16-year-old girl, but I did. People liked it. It got good reviews. So write don't don't do the commercial thing. Do the wildest thing that's in your head. Do the thing you love. And you got to take, I say that and people go, well, it's okay for you. You're already established. But it's like, I took a chance. When I wrote Sandman Slim, I told my agent, this is the last novel I'm going to write. If I can't sell this novel, if I can't make some money off this, I'm not writing novels anymore. I'm writing stories. So I took a shot. I gave myself, I gave myself something to shoot for. I gave myself a limit. I said, this is it for me. This is going to work or it's not going to work. And of course, I was lying to myself. If it hadn't worked, I'd have written something else. But at the time, it really motivated me to say, I'm being real hardcore here. And this is it. This is it. I need to get faith from the publishing world. I need to have faith in myself. And so it worked. And I got the book, the series, I had 12 books out of Sandman Slim, and I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the series. I'm proud of most of the books. I'm going to say most, not all. They're not all my favorite children. But got to get past that voice in your head. The voice in your head comes from often your parents. It comes from teachers. It comes from everybody who wanted to keep you in your place. And to be good, to be useful in any art form, you've gotta be a jerk sometimes. I mean, the whole thing is you've got to go beyond what people told you can do. And I don't mean in terms of talent. It's like people just say, you can't do it. You shouldn't do it. You've got to break out of that stuff. And again, whether it's confidence, whether it's arrogance, whatever it takes, break out of that box that people want to keep you in.
Man, Richard, that is one of the most inspirational things I've heard in a long time. That is a perfect way to send us off here. Thank you, everyone who's watching it live. We got a good bit of people in here, and we got a lot of people I'm sure are going to jump on for the replay. Very inspirational. Thank you again, Richard, for jumping on here. Can't wait to see what you're cooking up next.